The Zodiac killer terrorized San Francisco in the late 60s, taunting police with coded messages and claims of dozens of murders.
It appears to us that he is killing just for the thrill.
Anywhere in the Bay Area or anywhere, he should go to the nearest law enforcement agency and turn himself in. And we will try to do whatever we can to help this man.
Early last Saturday evening, Celia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, both in their early 20s, were sitting on this knoll of land overlooking part of Lake Berryessa. They thought they were alone, but there was a third man on this knoll, a man who wore a medieval-style executioner's hood, carried a knife and gun, and intended to use them.
As of today, the Zodiac killer has only been officially connected to 5 deaths, but it's possible that he murdered a total of 37 people.
Well, I've been patrolling this lake now 11 years, and I've seen a lot of people that have been cut up by boats and this and that, and for no reason at all. That's about the worst I ever seen. The kids just chopped up, real nice college kids, just stabbed for no reason at all. I never witnessed anything like it before.
Search goes on in San Francisco for the man known as the Zodiac Killer. The elements involved today included psychiatrists, astrologists, and police guards for school buses.
School children are nice targets. I shall wipe out a school bus some morning, shoot out the tires, and then pick off the kiddies as they come bounding out. That was the threat of the Zodiac Killer. Now, every day, police cars follow the buses which would be likely targets. Officers armed with shotguns take the threat seriously.
I would say this, he knows he has a problem. He's a mental person that is sick.
This man is a serious problem to us. He's very, very sick and very dangerous person. In fact, it was just a day or so ago that we learned that little symbol of the circle with the cross in the center of it, this symbolizes the center of the universe, and this is called the sign of the Zodiac.
And now in the latest letter, the Zodiac says, if you cops think I'm going to take on a bus the way I stated I was, you deserve to have holes in your heads. To prove his authenticity, the Zodiac sent along this time a piece of the shirt belonging to the cab driver he murdered.
The infamous Zodiac killer has never been identified. Some experts believe he may have started his killing spree in San Diego County.
The psychotic killer has already murdered 5. 1 at a lover's lane near a lake just north of San Francisco. 3 others in nearby Vallejo. The latest, a taxi driver in San Francisco. The Zodiac killer seems to crave publicity. He sent letters and cryptograms to newspapers and the police, recounting his crimes, threatening more murders, and making Bay Area residents very edgy.
He's an absolutely ruthless, merciless killer. He thinks killing is just killing. So somebody like that is going to be a very serious problem for us.
Today, the mystery of who the Zodiac was continues to haunt Northern California because he could still be alive, walking the very streets of our city.
In the fog-shrouded streets of San Francisco, the 1960s gave birth to a chilling enigma, an invisible predator who haunted the shadows of the night, slaughtering random people at will, striking out of nowhere with vicious power. Known only by the self-assigned moniker Zodiac, this serial killer left an indelible mark on Northern California, terrorizing the region with a series of brutal murders between 1968 and 1969. The Zodiac killer claimed at least 5 lives, targeting young couples in secluded areas and a lone cab driver in the heart of the city. But it wasn't just the unsolved and terrifying murders that paralyzed the community of San Francisco. It was also the Zodiac killer's calculated taunts. Letters written by the killer in a cold, mocking tone were sent directly to local newspapers. These cryptic messages, filled with ciphers and threats of further violence, struck fear into the hearts of millions. The Zodiac killer boasted of hiding his real name within one of the ciphers, daring authorities or citizens to crack it. While some of his ciphers were decoded, 2 remain a mystery and are unsolved to this day, with no official solutions seemingly in sight. Despite numerous investigations, including a suspect list ranging from school teachers to notorious criminals, the identity of the Zodiac killer has eluded law enforcement for over 50 years. And even more disturbingly, the Zodiac killer himself claimed that he took 37 lives. Yes, you heard that correctly. He claimed he killed a total of 37 people, but only 5 murders have been officially confirmed by the police. The other murders, which we will talk about in this documentary, could provide clues to who he was and links to his real identity. So join us today as we dive deep into the mind of a serial killer who has inspired fear, fascination, and endless speculation in the public for over 50 years. In our documentary today, we will suggest a relatively new suspect, speak with someone who was related to them, and hopefully prove to viewers that we can definitively say that we know who the Zodiac was. But you'll have to watch to the end of the video to find out who we think that is. In our video today, we invite you, the viewer, to ask the question with us. Will the Zodiac killer's true identity ever be unmasked? Or will he forever remain a ghost in the Bay Area's dark history? An otherworldly killer that will haunt Northern California for the rest of time. I'm Colin. You're watching the Paranormal Files. This is our deep dive on the ground in California investigation into the identity of the Zodiac killer, America's most infamous uncaught serial killer. Alright guys, so I've wanted to do a Zodiac killer video for a very long time. I've been especially interested in the Lake Berryessa site that we're going to get to. And there are so many just things to explore with this story. I'm going to give you a shortened summary with details about exactly what happened, but I do want to point out that there's so much information here that I would really just encourage all of you to go research the story yourself and draw your own conclusions. Now, we are going to suggest a suspect in this video towards the end. We spoke to a relative of this suspect about the actual line item details that link to them to some of these murder scenes. This is relatively new information that is just coming out right now, so we're really happy that we were able to line up that interview and get the information that we got because it lined up with our paranormal investigation. It was just crazy. And if you like these sorts of videos, be sure to go listen to the podcast that my wife and I co-host, Murder in America. It's available on all streaming platforms. We have had so many amazing people join us on that journey. We're consistently ranked as one of the top podcasts in true crime across the charts. So it's really just wonderful to have so many people out there watching. And if you like these conspiracy videos, be sure to check out my new channel, The Conspiracy Files, which is going to be linked in the description, where we're posting tons of content like this all the time. Enough with the self-promotion, let's get into the murders. The first murders widely attributed to the infamous Zodiac killer were the tragic shootings of two teenagers, Betty Lou Jensen and David Arthur Faraday, on the night of December 20th, 1968. 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen was a student at Hogan High School, while Faraday, her 17-year-old date, attended Vallejo High School nearby. That evening, Faraday borrowed his mother's car and arrived at Jensen's house at approximately 8 p.m. By 8:30, the young couple had left her residence and made their way to visit one of Jensen's friends. After leaving her friend's house sometime after 9 p.m., Jensen and Faraday drove out to the rural outskirts of Vallejo, eventually stopping at a known Lover's Lane along Lake Herman Road. This secluded spot, a popular destination for young couples, became the stage for a chilling and senseless act of violence. Between 10:15 and 10:30 p.m., a passing driver that night noticed the couple's vehicle parked on the roadside, positioned near a gravel pullout adjacent to the gate of a water pumping station. Another witness passed by around 11 p.m., seeing the car still was in the same spot. Sometime between 11:05 and 11:10 p.m., the couple was attacked. Based on the police reconstruction of the crime, an unknown assailant pulled his vehicle alongside Faraday's, stopping about 10 feet away on the passenger side. Exiting his car, the killer approached the young couple and began firing a series of shots into their vehicle. Although none of the initial bullets struck either of the victims, investigators believe the gunman was trying to frighten them out of the car. Both teens attempted to flee through the passenger side door, and Jensen successfully escaped. But as Faraday was exiting, the assailant shot him point blank in the head with a .22 caliber rifle. After incapacitating Faraday, the killer turned his attention to Jensen, who had managed to get a short distance from the vehicle. As she ran, the gunman chased after her, firing multiple shots. 5 bullets struck her in the back and she collapsed, succumbing to her injuries. The assailant then quickly fled the scene in his vehicle. A motorist discovered the lifeless bodies of Jensen and Faraday at 11:10 p.m. She flagged down a nearby police patrol, which immediately responded to the scene, but when officers arrived, Jensen was already dead. Somehow, Faraday was found still clinging to life, but despite being rushed to the hospital, he died from his gunshot wounds shortly after. Police were left with few clues at the crime scene, They couldn't recover any useful tire tracks or footprints that might have identified the killer, and no witnesses had seen the actual attack. Investigators struggled to find a motive for the brutal murders, eventually concluding that the killer might have been a deranged individual acting without any clear reason. An extensive investigation unfolded over the following months, but despite their efforts, authorities were unable to identify a viable suspect. The murders gained widespread attention in the press, but a significant breakthrough never came. For the next 7 months, the killer appeared to vanish into thin air like a ghost haunting the night. Not until later would experts like Michael Kelleher and David Van Nuys speculate that this period of inactivity was a cooling off period typical of serial killers who reflect on their actions before striking again. However, the Zodiac killer's reign of terror was far from over. Now, in this documentary, we actually visited every single crime scene of the 5 officially recognized Zodiac murders, and we performed paranormal investigations at them. But since we did them out of order, and the evidence that we captured confirms itself as we go along throughout the investigations, I'm just going to tell you the stories first, and then we're going to move on to the ghost hunting. So if you don't want to hear the history for some reason, I would skip maybe 30 minutes. And yeah, some of the evidence that we captured is incredibly bizarre. But now we have to get to the Zodiac's second official murder. Around midnight, on the night spanning July 4th and 5th, 1969, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were attacked in a brutal shooting that left Darlene dead and Michael severely injured. Darlene, 22 years old at the time, was a well-liked woman in her community, likely due to her friendly nature and her work at a local diner. It was through this job that she met that 19-year-old, Michael, and the two developed a friendship. Despite being married to Dean Ferrin, Darlene decided to go out with Michael on the night of July 4th. After receiving a phone call, likely from Michael, at around 11:30 p.m., she left her house and arrived at his home just before midnight. From this point forward, the details of that night become murky, as conflicting accounts and theories cloud this sequence of events. Some information comes from research conducted by Zodiac expert Robert Graysmith, but not all of it has been verified. According to one version of the events, soon after leaving Michael's house, both he and Darlene became uneasy, suspecting that they were being followed by a vehicle, a light-colored car driven by a man they didn't recognize. For reasons that remain unclear, Darlene decided to drive out of town, heading in the direction of Lake Herman Road, a secluded area already infamous for its dark history, the first Zodiac murders. Just before the clock struck midnight, Darlene turned her car into the deserted parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park, another remote spot known to attract young couples. This location was literally only a couple of miles away from the infamous Lake Herman Road where those first murders took place. We visited the area. It's like a 5-minute drive between these two crime scenes. And back then, that area was isolated. It was dark. It wasn't as built up as it is now. There were no street lights. It was a very, very quiet area where couples could go to spend some time together, if you get what I'm saying. Upon pulling in, Darlene parked her car around 70 feet away from the entrance to the parking lot, but soon afterwards, another car pulled up. This mysterious vehicle, which stopped approximately 80 feet from Darlene's car, switched off its headlights. The driver remained inside, eerily still behind the wheel, staring at the couple. Michael, feeling uneasy, asked Darlene if she knew the person in the other car, but she simply brushed off his concerns, telling him not to worry. This has led some people, a lot of people actually, to believe that Darlene did know this guy, and we're going to talk about that later. Shortly afterwards, though, the phantom car sped out of the parking lot, leaving the couple alone in their vehicle. 5 minutes after driving away, though, that mysterious car returned, this time stopping just a few feet from the passenger side of Darlene's car. The driver then stepped out and approached the couple's vehicle, shining a flashlight through their window. Initially, they believed that this man was a police officer, so they lowered their windows expecting to be questioned. However, without saying a word, the man suddenly opened fire. A bullet tore through Michael's right arm, while another struck Darlene in the neck, causing her to collapse onto the steering wheel. Michael, desperate to escape, struggled to open the passenger door, but discovered the handle was either broken or missing entirely. The shooter momentarily retreated to his car, but didn't leave. Instead, he seemed to rummage for something out of Michael's line of sight. As he continued to struggle, the assailant, the Zodiac killer, then returned and fired 4 more shots, 2 at Darlene and 2 at Michael, before quickly fleeing the scene. The sounds of the attack were faintly heard by a golf course groundskeeper, who would later estimate the time to have been around 12:10 a.m. The killer left behind no obvious evidence that could lead the police to him. Shortly afterward, 3 teenagers pulled into the parking lot, discovering the bloodied couple inside the car. They immediately drove off to find help, and by 12:20 a.m., officers had arrived at the scene. Darlene was pronounced dead at the hospital by 12:40 a.m., while Michael, though gravely injured, survived. Despite his trauma, Michael managed to provide police with a description of the attacker. He described him as a stocky white man, around 5 foot 8 inches tall and weighing between 195 and 200 pounds. He had a large round face, short curly light brown hair, and a noticeable potbelly. The man wore dark clothing and did not appear to have glasses on. While detailed, these characteristics were not enough for investigators to identify a suspect. At roughly 12:40 a.m., the Vallejo Police Department received a chilling phone call from a payphone located just a couple of blocks from their station. The caller, calm and emotionless, said,
"I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you'll find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye."
This eerie message led some to speculate that Darlene may have known her killer beforehand, a theory prominently featured in Robert Graysmith's book, Zodiac. Graysmith drew on testimonies from Darlene's friends and pieced together events suggesting a possible relationship between she and the Zodiac killer. However, many of these claims were based on speculation rather than hard evidence, and no concrete link between Darlene and the killer has ever been proven. Well, according to some people, we're going to talk about that later in the video. When questioned at the hospital, Michael expressed uncertainty about whether Darlene knew the attacker. Some sources claim that Michael suggested Darlene recognize the man and that his name might have been Richard, though other accounts indicate he was unsure. Darlene's sister later claimed that one of Darlene's boyfriends had been named Richard, further fueling speculation. However, in the Zodiac's later letters, he referred to Darlene only as the girl, offering no indication that he knew her personally. I think that was something to throw off the police, but we're going to talk about that later. Adding to the intrigue, in 2010, a photograph surfaced showing Darlene with a man who bore a striking resemblance to the Zodiac killer's composite sketch. Authorities believe the image was taken in San Francisco in either 1966 or 1967, but the man's identity remains a mystery. Further connections emerged when it was revealed that Darlene had known Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, the Zodiac's earlier victims. She had attended Hogan High School and lived just a couple of blocks from Betty Lou Jensen's home, which has raised further questions about the extent of her connection to the Zodiac's crime spree. Think about it. She's saying that she known this guy, his name is Richard, there's pictures and all this evidence, the victims knew each other, there has to be a link there, right? Well, some theories suggest that Darlene and Michael were being followed that night, possibly by someone familiar with them, adding another layer of mystery to their deaths. In one version of the events, there was even a high-speed pursuit before Darlene inexplicably pulled into the parking lot where the attack occurred. If they had been followed, it's unclear why Darlene didn't try to leave the lot after the unknown driver initially sped away. Kelleher and Van Nuys argue that Darlene's reassurance to Michael not to worry and their belief that the man was a police officer were more likely if the couple had not been fleeing someone they knew. Despite decades of investigation and speculation, no definitive answers have surfaced. That photo of Darlene and the unidentified man, combined with the Zodiac's cryptic letters, has only deepened the mystery surrounding her tragic death. And now we're talking about the letters. Between 1969 and 1974, a series of ominous letters arrived from someone calling himself the Zodiac. These letters were mailed to local newspapers, and it was obvious that the Zodiac killer was trying to get the public's attention. Each note opened with the chilling phrase, "This is the Zodiac speaking," and was marked with a peculiar symbol resembling the crosshairs of a rifle scope. During this time, the Zodiac sent out 4 cryptograms, which are basically coded messages, and 2 of those were eventually deciphered, one in 1969 and another one much more recently in 2020. Most of the letters bore San Francisco postmarks, except for one dated March 13, 1971, which was sent from a town called Pleasanton. The Zodiac's frequent use of astrological references drove investigators to study occult texts and astrological charts, even consulting with psychics in a desperate attempt to unearth any clues. So, on August 1st, 1969, 3 newspapers, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner, each received a nearly identical handwritten letter. A psychiatrist reviewing the notes later described the author as likely to be reclusive and emotionally troubled. In these letters, the Zodiac claimed responsibility for the murders at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs, writing that he was killing people so he could enslave them in the afterlife. Each of these letters contained a section of a 408-character cryptogram, which the Zodiac claimed would reveal his true identity once solved. He also threatened more killings unless all 3 papers published their portions of the cipher on the front page. His chilling ultimatum was clear. This is a quote.
I will cruise around all weekend, killing lone people in the night, and then move on to kill again until I have a dozen victims.
The San Francisco Chronicle printed its portion of the cryptogram the following day, along with a statement from Vallejo Police Chief Jack E. Stiltz. Stiltz, still unconvinced the letter was genuine, called for the killer to send additional details to confirm his identity. Just a few days later, on August 4th, 1969, the San Francisco Examiner received a new letter, beginning with the same unsettling phrase.
This is the Zodiac speaking.
The letter marked the first time the killer referred to himself by that name. In this note, the Zodiac provided additional information about the murders, details that had not been made public. He taunted the authorities, promising that once they cracked his code, they'd know exactly who he was, but he had purposefully made this code near impossible to solve. The Central Intelligence Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation worked diligently to unravel the mystery of the 408-character ciphers sent by the Zodiac, but their efforts proved fruitless. On August 5th of that year, however, Donald and Betty Harden, a schoolteacher couple from Salinas, California, successfully cracked the code. The solution revealed a chilling, error-ridden message in which the Zodiac appeared to allude to Richard Connell's 1924 short story, The Most Dangerous Game. In this cryptic note, the Zodiac declared that his murders were meant to provide him with slaves in the afterlife. Although the Zodiac promised that his identity was hidden within the cipher, no name was uncovered in the decoded text. Instead, he explained that he would never reveal his real name, claiming that doing so would interfere with his goal of collecting victims for his afterlife. The disturbing message read, quote,
I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all thee I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife.
And then a weird word. So everyone in San Francisco and Northern California is on edge at this point. There is a serial killer targeting random couples, seemingly random couples, all across the San Francisco kind of area. The killer is writing into newspapers claiming he's gonna kill more. He's going to collect these people as slaves in the afterlife. He loves killing. He's sending in codes. I mean, the Zodiac at this point is like a boogeyman. It's the biggest news story, I'd say, in the United States, because it's such a big deal. Front page of the newspaper. Everyone's trying to figure out who this is. So there's a lot of public pressure. And then the Zodiac strikes again. On September 27th, 2 students from Pacific Union College, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, were enjoying a quiet picnic near Lake Berryessa. Now, I want to say we went out to Lake Berryessa, and it is very far from San Francisco. It was about a 2-hour drive to get out there. So the Zodiac first struck in 2 areas that were like a 5-minute drive from each other, really close to one another. And then he randomly struck about an hour and a half, 2 hours from there in a national park, completely random out of nowhere. I really want to stress how just like driving out there, we were just thinking, this is so crazy that he randomly picked this place because it's just so random. The spot that Brian and Cecilia had chosen at Lake Berryessa was a small peninsula connected to the mainland by a narrow sandpath known as Twin Oak Ridge. As they relaxed that afternoon, a man appeared, standing about 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighing over 170 pounds. He wore a strange black hood, similar to an executioner's mask. with dark sunglasses attached over the eye holes. On his chest, a bib-like panel displayed a white cross circle emblem, about 3 inches wide. The man carried a gun, which Brian believed to be a .45 caliber, and introduced himself as an escaped convict from a jail with a 2-word name, either in Colorado or Montana. He claimed to have killed a guard and stolen a car, but now needed a new vehicle and cash to flee to Mexico, because the one he had stolen was, quote, too hot. Though a police officer later speculated that the man was referring to a prison in Deer Lodge, Montana, which I'm going to add is really weird. The prison in Deer Lodge, Montana that they think the Zodiac killer was referring to is actually the old Montana State Prison, which we filmed that on the show about a year ago. If you guys remember that episode that my dad, Papa Spooks, and I did at the Montana State Prison. That's the prison that they think Zodiac was referring to. But a park ranger recalled Brian mentioning Colorado as the likely location right after the crime. The assailant that day, the Zodiac, had come prepared. He handed Cecilia pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline and instructed her to tie up Brian. Then the Zodiac proceeded to bind Cecilia after checking and tightening the knots. At first, Brian thought this encounter was a robbery, but the situation quickly escalated. The man pulled out a knife and began attacking them. Brian was stabbed 6 times, while Cecilia suffered 10 stab wounds. And likely, if you've ever seen David Fincher's Zodiac, which is an incredible film, you will remember this scene taking place at Lake Berryessa. It's one of the most haunting scenes in cinema history. Just want to add that in there, how well they reconstructed what would have happened and how eerie it is. Just crazy. Leaving the couple bleeding, the Zodiac then trekked 500 yards uphill to where Brian's car was parked on Knoxville Road. He used a black felt-tip pen to mark the door with the same cross-circle symbol from his chest, followed by a sinister note.
Vallejo, 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27/69, 6:30 by knife.
He was listing out his previous crimes and the one he had just committed. Later, at 7:40 p.m., the same man placed a call to the Napa County Sheriff's Department from a payphone at a car wash in downtown Napa. In a calm voice, he told the operator,
"I want to report a murder. No, a double murder."
Before admitting that he was the one who had killed them.
The call to Napa police came within an hour after the stabbings. A young man's voice reported the double murder. He described the couple, their car, the scene, and hung up. Police believe it was the suspect. The call was similar to one received by Vallejo police after the shooting of a young Lover's Lane couple there earlier. There have been 3 slayings in the Vallejo area in the past year, and activities at the sheriff's office today were centered around linking the cases.
We have, of course, and have had in our department, their reports since their incidents, and being so close to their area and feeling that it might come over in our area. We, of course, have been working very closely with Vallejo in checking state hospital patients and former patients, because this guy is a pathological psycho killer.
A local radio reporter, Pat Stanley, found the phone still hanging off the hook moments later. The payphone, in fact, was only a few blocks away from the sheriff's office and approximately 27 miles away from the crime scene. Investigators lifted a wet palm print from the receiver, but despite their efforts, it never matched any known suspect. Meanwhile, a man and his son who had been fishing nearby heard the victim's desperate cries and rushed to get help from park rangers. Law enforcement officers Dave Collins and Ray Land from the Napa County Sheriff's Department were the first to arrive. Cecilia was still conscious when they got there, and she provided them with a detailed description of her attacker before being taken to Queen of the Valley Hospital in Napa. Unfortunately, later on, Cecilia slipped into a coma during the ambulance ride and passed away 2 days later without ever regaining consciousness. Brian Hartnell, though severely injured, survived and shared his account of the terrifying ordeal with the media.
We had a complete lack of communications. I kept trying to talk to him, and I think he could still use help. I mean, I don't really think he knows his need, and if he could only realize his need, and he doesn't have to, if he could just call the authorities or call a help institution of some type, I really think he can be helped. He's not beyond hope.
The only thing to me, this came out since then, but he told me at that time that he had killed a guard getting out of a prison. And so I did take him as a killer. To me, a killer isn't a normal person, so I assumed at the time that something was wrong, but as far as a psychopath or any other aberration, I really didn't realize at the moment. I wasn't concerned because I was cooperating with him and I expected that he would cooperate with me. And I tried to be as accommodating under the circumstances as possible to save the girl any harm. He told me that just to come up slowly, put up our hands, that he wanted our money. And I actually laughed at the moment because I told him, I says, I've only got 75 cents in my pocket. And I says, you're welcome to have it. But if you need help, I'm sure I can give you help otherwise. And I asked him what his problem was. And he mentioned that he was a convict trying to get to Mexico and needed money and transportation. And I offered him assistance. I told him what I was doing in school and that if I could be of any assistance whatsoever, I offered him my phone number, anything like this, and this just isn't what he wanted. He said he wanted money, and I was really sorry. I said, you've got to check if I'd really like to help you, if you would be willing to accept help. He said, well, what I need right now is to get you tied up. And so he had the girl tie me, and of course she was real nervous and tied me rather loosely. And he came and he tightened the knots up, and then he tied her up. And we continued the dialogue along most of this time. I happened to hear some rustling behind us, and I asked her to look because she was facing that direction. I was facing toward the water, and I asked her to note, what was going on, and she said, "Oh, there's a man walking around there." And she became concerned about it, and I said, "Well, actually, don't worry about it. There's a lot of people, picnickers, etc. And just if he kept coming, let me know." And she kind of kept watching. I noticed she wasn't following my conversation. She told me he was stepping behind a tree, and the tree was about 30 feet behind us. And when he came out, she said he's got a mask on, and that was my first inkling that there was anything actually wrong going on. He came, I turned around, and we were both still sitting down.
Can you describe for us what your attacker looked like?
Well, when he was standing up, he kind of would shift onto one. He acted like a very nervous person. He was of medium to short height, kind of pouchy, real casual, I don't want to say sloppily, but real casually dressed, of course real dusty from the lake, and he had this black hood on, came clear down to here. Just little slits in the eyes, and where, these clip-on glasses, they were clipped into those little loops.
You remained conscious through the entire ordeal. How long was it until help finally came?
As soon as he got us, of course, Cecilia and I prayed that, that whatever the Lord wished, that could be expedient, and that we were willing to do whatever he had in mind. But we also realized that half the battle was going to have to be ours, that we were going to have to help ourselves. I was able to untie one of her hands, but she was too weak to untie me at that time. So I scooted into a position where I could be looking out across the lake, and after calling several times, I found one position that had a little more echo to it that I thought was a little louder. And I called, and several boats went by, but they didn't stop. I don't know if they thought we were joking or what, but finally one fisherman who was going real slow, he stopped. He shut off his motor, and we cajoled and called, and we did everything to try to get him to come. And he sat there for about 15 minutes, and he did finally come closer, but he wouldn't come to the shore. I guess he was afraid that the man might still be around. He said he'd go get help, but I assumed he was like, so many other things we read about, he just didn't want to get involved, and so I decided that we were going to have to do this on our own. So I encouraged her enough to get me untied, and I got one wrist loose so that I could get the rest untied, and then I untied her, and then she still was so weak that she couldn't move.
How were you finally found?
Well, she was found down on the blanket still. I made it up about 300 yards up almost to the road, and it was a slow process because I couldn't see, I kept blacking out, and my legs kept getting weak. But I was getting progress. I think I could have made it to the road, but a pickup truck was coming along with these dirt roads, and apparently this man had called for help, and he picked me up and took me back down to the girl.
Brian will probably be able to leave Queen of the Valley Hospital fairly soon. But where he's going from here is being kept secret in the event that the man who attacked him and killed Cecilia Shepard on Lake Berryessa a week ago Saturday tries again. Brian made it for two reasons some people might regard as intangibles, but reasons that for him were enough: a strong faith and an equally strong will to live. Dave Monsies, Eyewitness News, at Queen of the Valley Hospital, Napa.
Detective Ken Narlow, one of the first officers assigned to the case, pursued the investigation tirelessly until he retired in 1987. But the mystery of the attack would continue to haunt the region.
Early last Saturday evening, Celia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, both in their early 20s, were sitting on this knoll of land overlooking part of Lake Berryessa. They thought they were alone, But there was a third man on this knoll, a man who wore a medieval-style executioner's hood, carried a knife and gun, and intended to use them.
I've had 11 years patrolling this lake, and I've seen a lot of people cut up by boat accidents and this, but this is one of the worst things I ever witnessed for no reason at all. Just a hooded man came up with a pistol drawn on him, tied him up, and then told him he had to kill him. So tied him up, and then he still didn't take the money. And the kid said, the money's in my pocket. He said, I don't want the money, all I want to do is kill you. Yeah, when I arrived on the scene that Saturday night around 7:13, well, found this young girl in on the shoreline here, all stabbed in several places. And her boyfriend, male companion, came to from, he had been stabbed, and he had taken off for help. And the other patrolman came in, which is Dennis Lamb. He found him some 100 yards from here, passed out. So he brought him back to the scene of the where the girl was.
7:40 p.m., Officer Slate at the Napa Police Department received this call, and the subject stated, I want to report a murder. No, a double murder. They are about 2 miles above park headquarters in Lake Berryessa, and they are driving a Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. And with that, the officer asked, well, where are you now? And he stated, I did it. And with that, the officer could feel that there was nobody on the line. He said, are you there, and there was no answer. This guy is a pathological psycho killer. There's no doubt about it.
Is there any doubt in your mind that there is or is not any connection between Vallejo and Berryessa?
This we're sifting out now. I wouldn't say that there is any connection, yet I wouldn't want to tell you that there isn't at this time. We have some pretty good physical evidence that we're working on now. And of course, we're going to get together with the Vallejo authorities. We've been in contact with them since the incident, and we definitely will pool our resources.
And now we get to the final attack and murder officially attributed to the Zodiac killer. Two weeks after the Lake Berryessa attacks, on the night of October 11th at around 9:40 p.m., Paul Stein, a taxi driver, picked up a passenger in downtown San Francisco. The man requested a ride to the intersection of Washington and Maple Streets in the Presidio Heights neighborhood. When they reached the destination, the passenger asked to continue a short distance further to Washington and Cherry Streets. Why he asked to be driven the extra block remains unclear. Perhaps he noticed someone nearby or preferred the next corner, which was dimly lit and partially hidden by a large tree. Stein complied and drove the additional block. At around 9:55 p.m., the passenger pulled out a handgun and fatally shot the driver, Paul Stein, in the head. After the murder, the attacker took Stein's wallet and car keys, and also cut a swatch of bloody clothing from Paul's shirt. This would be the last official confirmed killing by the Zodiac. Across the street, 3 teenagers witnessed the crime unfold. They quickly called the San Francisco Police Department while the killer was still at the scene. They described the suspect as a heavy-set white man wearing a dark jacket. However, due to a miscommunication, the police dispatch mistakenly reported the suspect as a black man. The teenagers also saw the man wiping down the cab and rummaging through Stein's belongings. While doing so, he left partial fingerprints from 2 fingers of his right hand inside of the vehicle. Responding to the call, patrol officers arrived at Washington and Cherry within minutes. Just 2 blocks away from the crime scene, they encountered a white man in dark clothing walking northward, heading toward the Presidio Army base. This man may have been, and people really think that it was, the Zodiac himself. The officers briefly stopped the man and asked if he had noticed anything suspicious, to which the man casually responded that he had seen someone waving a gun earlier before heading east. The officers, operating under the false assumption that the suspect was black, drove off without further questioning him. That was the closest they ever came to arresting the Zodiac killer, looking him straight in the eyes, and he got away. Soon afterwards, additional officers arrived at the scene where Stein, the cab driver, was found dead. They immediately launched a search of the surrounding area, including the Presidio, but the Zodiac had likely already fled, possibly in a nearby vehicle, and may have crossed the Golden Gate Bridge to make his escape. Initially, authorities believed Stein's murder to be a robbery gone wrong, but just 2 days later, on October 13th, the San Francisco Chronicle received a new letter from the Zodiac, in which he claimed responsibility for the killing and enclosed a piece of Stein's blood-stained shirt as evidence. The letter also threatened violence against school children. The Zodiac said that he was going to bomb and blow up a bus full of school kids and shoot them as they came off of the bus. which prompted police across the Bay Area to implement protective measures, including escorting school buses and protecting the children.
School children are nice targets. I shall wipe out a school bus some morning, shoot out the tires, and then pick off the kiddies as they come bounding out. That was the threat of the Zodiac killer. Now, every day, police cars follow the buses which would be likely targets. Officers armed with shotguns take the threat seriously.
The bus patrol started first in this county Wednesday. Police units from various agencies using marked and unmarked cars follow buses on their runs to and from schools. Assisted by aerial patrols and some buses now equipped with two-way police radios, the massive patrols are responses to the Zodiac killer's threat to stop a bus and shoot children. The patrols are concentrated in the remote sections of the county, similar to areas where 5 were murdered. The Napa School District is the third largest in the state in busing. Its 70 buses travel more than 4,000 miles a day. These patrols have been expanded to several counties, and the Highway Patrol has written guidelines for bus drivers.
We have specifically requested that they alert their drivers to not stop under any conditions if a shot is fired or if their bus is subjected to a flat tire by the sniper. Further, that they get the children down immediately and proceed with all speed out of the area, and to try and attract all the possible attention by blowing their horns, therefore get out of the situation.
Is the Highway Patrol and other law enforcement agencies satisfied with these steps? In the event this happens, help can come in time?
We're satisfied that it is all that can reasonably be done under the circumstances that might be present at the particular time, giving due consideration to the vast number of buses operating.
Have any of the drivers expressed any concern over their job now?
Well, there's naturally talk. Everybody's, I guess, tense about it, but they all seem to be in good spirits and all seem to be going on with the job. I don't know of anybody that's quit.
You're not afraid?
No, I'm not.
No, not too afraid.
A few days after the murder, the officers who had encountered the suspect realized they had likely spoken with the Zodiac that night. They, along with the teenage witnesses, helped complete a composite sketch of the killer. Detectives Bill Armstrong and Dave Tashi were assigned to investigate the case, which would later become a focal point in the Zodiac investigation. In the early hours of October 22, 1969, at around 2 a.m., a caller identifying himself as the Zodiac contacted the Oakland Police Department. He demanded that either F. Lee Bailey or Melvin Belli, two well-known attorneys, appear on a morning talk show called AM San Francisco, hosted by Jim Dunbar on KGO TV. While Bailey was unavailable, Belli agreed to participate. During the broadcast, Dunbar urged viewers to keep the phone lines open, and the alleged Zodiac phoned multiple times. Belli engaged the caller, asking him to use a less menacing name, to which the man chose Sam. The caller claimed he wouldn't reveal his identity because he feared being executed in the gas chamber, which was California's method of capital punishment at the time.
Attorney Melvin Belli, accompanied by police and newsmen, waited 45 minutes today to keep a rendezvous with San Francisco's Zodiac killer of 5 persons. The man who made the appointment never showed up. The meeting was arranged this morning when a caller, identifying himself as Sam, reached Belli on a KGO TV talk show. He said he was the Zodiac killer and needed help. Here's how it looked and sounded.
Talk to us. Just tell us what's going on inside you right now, Sam, please.
I have headache.
Right. How long have you had those headaches, Sam? In a long time?
Since I killed a kid.
Well, was it before December that you had the headaches?
Yes.
Were you in service that you might have had an injury in service? Did you ever fall out of a tree or downstairs? Were you ever unconscious?
I don't know.
You don't remember. Does aspirin do you any good?
No.
Doesn't do any good. Sam, that stuff never did me any good either when I had headaches. Sam, let me ask you a question. Did you attempt to call this program one other time when Mr. Belli was with us? And you
what?
Did you try to call us one other time about two or 3 weeks ago when Mel Belli was with us?
Yes.
And you, and we couldn't get through? Couldn't get through? The phones were tied up? Was that it?
Yes.
Right. Sam, let me ask you this. There's some reason why you go to a particular doctor or a particular priest, and some reason why apparently you wanted to talk to me or Lee. Is it that you feel that we have compassion for people who get in trouble? Or is it you feel that we can do something for you? Or is it you feel that we're have enough integrity that if we promise you something, that we're going to stick to it.
Well, let's find out why he wanted to talk to. Why did you want to talk to Mr. Belli, Sam?
I don't want to be hurt.
Listeners to KGO Television's AM talk show heard a voice this morning purporting to be that of the Zodiac killer. The man phoned the show after advising police last night that he would and would want to talk with attorneys Melvin Belli or F. Lee Bailey. Belli showed up and listened, while a man, who said to call him Sam, asked, "What will they do with me? I don't want to go to the gas chamber." He complained of headaches and he groaned as if in pain. The attorney and show host Jim Dunbar made a date to meet the caller later in the morning at an undisclosed location.
I think a man that's sick, I think a man that's going into a storm, and it squares away with the pattern of the man from what objectively we know that Zodiac did. But the thing that bothered... Oh, heavens, with the doctor, the people that have called in here that want to give him medical help, he's not going to go to trial until we know that this man is a human being in front of a judge. In other words, he's got to get his headaches cured. This man, objectively, without even seeing him, I think any psychiatrist would say that this man is sick, sick, sick. I can say there'll be no capital punishment, but I can't speak for the district attorney. That's the reason I can't make any assurance until I go down and talk to Ferrin. And then he represents San Francisco more officially than I do, and it's up to him then to take it from there.
The caller's plea to avoid the gas chamber was taken up at the Hall of Justice with the district attorney, who said he could not make a deal.
Do you think it might be worth making a deal just to capture the man?
To capture the man? That would be up to the police officers and law enforcement. We would like to see the man who is the killer apprehended, but I have nothing as of now to inform this office or guarantee this office that they're bringing the man who committed these horrible crimes to our attention.
Belli arranged to meet Sam, or the Zodiac, at a shop on Mission Street in Daly City, but the rendezvous never occurred.
Belli, Dunbar, and the chief of inspectors went to meet the caller south of San Francisco. They waited 45 minutes with no contact, and the police came back with this report.
Nothing came of that. We went out to the location where the meet was to have been. Mr. Belli was out there, Mr. Dunbar was out there, and nobody appeared.
Can you tell us where that was?
It was in the, a little out of San Francisco, in the outer end of the Mission District.
Do you believe that really was the Zodiac who called that program this morning?
Not necessarily. I listened to the program. My opinion, for what it's worth, my opinion is that this is no hoaxer, no prankster. The man on that show, I sincerely believe, has a problem, has a mental problem, but he may or may not have been the so-called Zodiac person.
So no one knows yet if they had the Zodiac killer on the phone. They'll have witnesses listen to a tape of the broadcast to determine that. But it seems that a solution to the 5 Zodiac murders is just as far away as it was before. Spencer Michaels, KCRA News, San Francisco.
Investigators later traced the calls to a mental patient named Eric Weil, concluding that he was not the real Zodiac. On November 8, 1969, the Zodiac sent another cryptogram, a 340-character cipher, which remained a mystery for over 5 decades. The code, labeled Z340, was finally cracked on December 5, 2020, by a team of international codebreakers. The decoded message revealed that the Zodiac was not the person who called into AM San Francisco. He stated that he was unafraid of the gas chamber, as it would expedite his arrival to Paradise, where he believed he would be served by the people he had killed. The FBI confirmed the authenticity of the cipher's solution, but noted that it provided no further insight into the Zodiac's identity. The decrypted Z340 cipher read,
"I hope you're having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. So they are afraid of death, but I am not afraid because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise death."
The following day, on November 9th, the Zodiac sent a 7-page letter claiming that just minutes after killing Paul Stein, 2 police officers had stopped and spoken with him. He also taunted authorities with threats of blowing up a school bus and boasted about his intelligence, claiming they could never catch him because he had been too clever for them. Portions of this letter were published in the San Francisco Chronicle on November 12th, including the chilling claim about his encounter with the police. Officer Don Fuch, who was involved in the Stein investigation, penned a memo that same day explaining the details of the encounter with the suspect. On December 20th, exactly 1 year after the murders on Lake Herman Road, the Zodiac mailed another letter, this time to Marvin Belli. Enclosed with the letter was a piece of Paul Stein's shirt, and the Zodiac expressed his desire for Belli's help. In the spring of 1970, the Zodiac killer kept up his correspondence with the media and authorities, sending letters and cards to the press. A letter dated April 20th, 1970 contained a cipher of 13 symbols, followed by the phrase, "My name is blank." This code has never been cracked. In the same letter, Zodiac denied involvement in a bombing at a San Francisco police station that took the life of Sergeant Brian McDonald, but he also taunted authorities, claiming it was more satisfying to kill an officer than a regular citizen, because, quote, "a cop can shoot back." Additionally, the letter included a sketch of a bomb he claimed he would use to target that school bus, with the ominous equation at the bottom, Zodiac 10, SFPD 0. Just days later, on April 28, 1970, the Zodiac sent a greeting card to the Chronicle, where he teased about having a blast and signed it with his infamous cross-circle symbol. On the back, he issued another threat to use the bomb unless the newspaper published everything he had written. He also demanded to see people wearing buttons with his symbol, demonstrating his desire for recognition. In a letter postmarked June 26, 1970, the Zodiac expressed frustration at the lack of people wearing his requested Zodiac buttons. He claimed in the letter, quote, "I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a .38, end quote. This may have referred to the killing of SFPD Sergeant Richard Raditich, who had been fatally shot a week earlier while writing a traffic ticket. Despite the Zodiac's claim, though, San Francisco police never confirmed his involvement in Raditich's murder. Including this letter was a map of the Bay Area featuring a cross-circle symbol drawn over Mount Diablo, along with markings indicating 0, 3, 6, and 9. Zodiac's instructions said that the 0 should be aligned with magnetic north. A 32-character cipher accompanied the map, and the Zodiac hinted that solving the cipher and aligning it with the map would reveal the location of a hidden bomb set to go off in autumn. Neither the cipher nor the bomb were ever discovered. On July 24, 1970, the Zodiac wrote another letter, this time taking credit for the kidnapping of Kathleen Johns, who had escaped after being abducted in March. 2 days later, he sent another letter incorporating lyrics from The Mikado and outlining the torture he had in mind for his future slaves, in what he referred to as paradise. This chilling letter also included a new score, Zodiac 13, SFPD 0, alongside a large version of his cross-circle symbol. At the end of the letter, the Zodiac mentioned that the Mount Diablo code related to radians and measurements along those angles. In 1981, researcher Gareth Penn discovered that applying the radian hint to the map led to the locations of 2 Zodiac crime scenes. On October 7, 1970, the Chronicle received a small card nicknamed the 13-hole punch card, due to the 13 holes punched through it. Signed with the Zodiac symbol, the card had words and letters cut from a newspaper pasted across it. Inspectors Armstrong and Tashi concluded that it was likely sent by the Zodiac. Later that month, on October 27th, journalist Paul Avery received a Halloween card featuring the message, "Peekaboo, you are doomed," written inside by hand by the Zodiac killer. This card, signed with a Z and the Zodiac's cross-circle emblem, also included the phrase 14, which some have interpreted as a reference to a 14th victim. The threat was taken seriously enough to make the front page of the Chronicle, and Paul Avery began carrying a gun. Some reporters, in a dark-humored response, then wore buttons that read, "I am not Avery." On March 13, 1971, the Zodiac sent a letter to the LA Times, mocking the police's inability to catch him. In this letter, he claimed to have killed 17 victims. Zodiac expert Tom Voigt has suggested that the letter's postmark from Pleasanton was a grim joke, playing on the contrast between the town's name and the content of the letter. And then, years later, we get to the last Zodiac letter. After a long silence, the Zodiac returned with a letter postmarked January 29, 1974, in which he criticized a local columnist and described that the movie The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy he had ever watched. The letter included a short verse from The Mikado and ended with an odd symbol that remains unexplained. He also updated his tally, me 37. SFPD 0. Some researchers, like psychiatrist David Van Nuys, speculate that the Zodiac's crimes may have ceased due to a multiple personality disorder that became less severe with time, noting how his letters appeared to lose intensity. But several other letters have been suspected of Zodiac authorship over the years. It wasn't just those initial letters. For example, the Albany Times-Union received a letter in 1973 that bore the Zodiac symbol in place of a return address. In it, the writer threatened another murder on August 10th, offering a cryptic 3-line code that was later deciphered by the FBI to mention Albany Medical Center. However, no murder occurred on the specified date. In 1974, several letters sent to the Chronicle raised suspicions, though their authorship remains debated. One letter complained about the glorification of violence in the film Badlands, and another, signed The Red Phantom, protested a columnist's views. Though they bore some similarities to Zodiac's known communications, their authenticity remains inconclusive. And now we get to what, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting parts of this entire thing: the other possible victims of the Zodiac killer. You see, the exact number of people killed by the Zodiac, as well as the full duration of his violent spree, remains uncertain. In Zodiac, Robert Graysmith compiled a list suggesting the killer may have murdered 49 people. Other writers of the time speculated that the Zodiac might have been responsible for a range of notorious murders, but none of these connections have been definitively established. Raymond Davis Christie Hawthorne, a local historian, suggested that 29-year-old taxi driver Raymond Davis may have been another of the Zodiac's victims. Raymond was killed on April 10, 1962 in Oceanside, California. Hawthorne's research led the Oceanside police to announce an investigation into possible links between Davis's death and the Zodiac. The day before Davis's murder, someone believed to be the killer had called the police, taunting them with a vague threat, saying,
"I'm going to do something in Oceanside, and you won't be able to figure it out."
Late on April 10th, Davis radioed his dispatcher, stating he was picking up a passenger in South Oceanside. His body was discovered the following day, lying in an alley near the homes of 2 mayors. Before the public learned of the threatening phone call, police received another chilling call from the same individual. This caller said,
"Remember last week when I told you I was going to pull something big? I killed that cab driver, and I'm going after a bus driver next."
This prompted authorities to station armed guards on public buses in Oceanside. The Davis murder bore some resemblance to the Zodiac's later crimes. Both involved threats against public transportation, attacks on drivers in affluent areas, and cryptic communications aimed at frustrating investigators. The bullet that killed Davis came from a .22 caliber weapon, a signature detail in some of the Zodiac's known murders. But that case is still unsolved.
The cold case murder of a taxi cab driver in Oceanside could be tied to the Zodiac killer. Cab driver Ray Davis was murdered in 1962, and if there's a connection, he would be the Zodiac killer's first known victim. The similarities were first discovered by an Oceanside historian who spoke to News 8 for this True Crime Files report.
And there you can see the original newspaper article, Oceanside Cabbie Slain.
The murder of cab driver Ray Davis was front-page news in April of 1962. News 8 archive footage shows the taxi cab with a bullet hole in the windshield. An Oceanside police officer takes fingerprints.
The steering wheel, the door handle, and as you can see in the footage, perhaps maybe they're thinking he adjusted the mirror.
Davis was shot in the head and through the back, his body dragged out of the cab and dumped in an alley behind the 1900 block of South Pacific Street. The neighborhood is near the ocean and home to a former Oceanside mayor.
We see a sedan with an open garage door, a brick wall, and a wooden lattice, if you will, of the home of the former mayor of Oceanside. His last name was McDonald.
Oceanside police put out an alert saying they'd received 2 anonymous phone calls from the killer. One came in the day before the murder.
So on April 9th, the Oceanside Police Department get a phone call from an anonymous caller saying that I'm going to commit a crime that you will never solve.
Days later, he called police again, taking responsibility for the murder and threatening to kill a bus driver next.
For the police department for the city of Oceanside, it goes from just being a simple murder with a motive to being this taunting and then this threat.
Targeting a cabbie, taunting police, and threatening a bus driver. The same pattern of behavior would emerge years later in the Bay Area in a series of murders carried out by the Zodiac killer. Oceanside historian Christie Hawthorne discovered the pattern while going through old newspaper articles. The Zodiac killer was known for taunting police with letters, but he also made phone calls.
He certainly did call the police. He told the police where the bodies were and where to find them. And then he started playing a little bit more, cryptic games and doing these ciphers and coded messages.
In Oceanside, the cab driver picked up the killer from the intersection of Tremont Street and Mission Avenue.
Downtown Oceanside, the taxis had little stands where they were relegated to. So that's where the sign that said taxi or cab, that's where they would have parked. And that's where visitors or townsfolk would have known to go to get that taxi as well.
The taxi cab was found abandoned about 2 miles north of the body location in an alley off the 400 block of South Pacific Street. In 1969, the Zodiac killer shot a cab driver through the head, the same MO as the Oceanside killing. And in Oceanside, the killer used .22 caliber long ammunition, the same bullet used by the Zodiac killer in 1968.
So there's a lot of speculation. Of course, the Zodiac killer's never been identified, so we just don't know.
Oceanside police recently reopened the case to see if there could be a connection.
Well, we've been in touch with San Francisco PD because most of the cases were handled by San Francisco. And so we're trying to see what kind of evidence they have and compare that to what we have and see if there's anything that matches there.
Zodiac or not, the Oceanside historian is hoping forensic evidence from 1962 will lead to a break in the case.
The chances are probably minimal. I would like to think, however, that it's solvable.
Then we have Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. In 1972, the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department linked the Zodiac to the 1963 murders of 18-year-old Robert Domingos and his 17-year-old fiancée, Linda Edwards. The young couple were gunned down on a beach at Gaviota State Park after skipping school for senior ditch day. Their killer is believed to have attempted to restrain them with ropes before shooting them when they tried to flee. So the Zodiac would have approached them kind of like he did at the Lake Berryessa murder, tied them up, tried to tie them up, and then kind of let them run free and hunted them, essentially like The Most Dangerous Game, if you remember that reference he made in the letter to the game where they hunt humans. The weapon used in this crime was once again a .22 caliber, the same type of gun that was used in the other Zodiac killings. The ammo used also matched bullets used by the Zodiac in the confirmed cases. After killing this couple, the murderer dragged their bodies to a nearby shack and tried, unsuccessfully, to burn it down. Many similarities to other Zodiac cases have led people to believe that these were some of his early murders, though direct proof remains somewhat elusive. Then there's Johnny and Joyce Swindle. If you'll notice, there is a pattern here of this couples being targeted. Just like the first 3 Zodiac attacks, it's couples being targeted. Like this couple was just, that we just talked about, they were relaxing on the beach having a pleasant day when the Zodiac appeared, tried to tie them up like he did at the Lake Berryessa murder, and then shot at them. And we have another murder of a couple, Johnny and Joyce Swindle. On February 5th, 1964, Johnny and Joyce Swindle, newlyweds from Alabama, were shot to death while walking along Ocean Beach in San Diego. Their assailant, perched on a nearby bluff with a .22 caliber rifle, fired multiple shots at the couple, eventually approaching them to deliver fatal shots to their heads. Once again, it's that same .22 caliber gun that was used in the last 2 murders that we've been discussing, and the murders that Zodiac would carry out later on. Johnny's wallet and watch were stolen, with the watch being the same brand as one found at another Zodiac-linked crime scene. Despite sustaining multiple gunshot wounds, Johnny survived for several hours, but Joyce died instantly. The method of attack, shooting from a distance and finishing the victims off up close, mirrored other Zodiac killings, leading some to suspect the killer was responsible for the Swindles' deaths. The police had no clear suspects, and while the Zodiac connection remains debated, it's never been confirmed, and their murders remain unsolved to this day.
The infamous Zodiac killer has never been identified. Some experts believe he may have started his killing spree in San Diego County. In this True Crime Files report, News 8's David Govertson takes a look at rare film footage from 1964 of a double murder in Ocean Beach that could be the work of the Zodiac.
I heard 2 gunshots. They were about 2 to 3 seconds apart. And then I heard a man scream, "No, no."
Did the Zodiac killer gun down a young couple in Ocean Beach in February 1964? Some Zodiac experts say yes.
Joyce and Johnny, in my opinion, are the perfect candidates to be early Zodiac victims.
Newlyweds Joyce and Johnny Swindle taking a walk along the beach. A sniper on the cliffs above fires 5 shots, hitting both of them. He then climbs down to finish them off, shooting them both one more time in the head.
These were probably the 2 final shots which were fired at close range.
That's what he said, that was the 2 last shots that killed him.
Tom Voigt runs the website ZodiacKiller.com. He says this double murder was no random attack.
Just the fact that somebody was in such an unusual spot, up on that bluff at night in February, he seemed to have known their routine and was expecting them.
You could see he was gurgling and gasping. You could see his throat, a lot of action there, and groaning with it. And of course then I ran back up because I knew we needed an ambulance.
When the murders happened in 1964 here in Ocean Beach, the Zodiac killings hadn't even started yet up in the Bay Area. But right away, detectives noticed similarities between the murder of this couple and the murder of another young couple 8 months earlier on a beach in Santa Barbara County. Teenage sweethearts Bobby Dominguez and Linda Edwards were shot to death on Gaviota Beach in 1963.
There's a lot of evidence pointing to the Zodiac.
Author Soren Korsgaard wrote a book on the psychology of the Zodiac killer. He believes there is a Zodiac connection to the murders in Ocean Beach and Santa Barbara County.
After shooting them, he approached them and shot them again. He did the same thing with Dominguez and Edwards. He shot them, reloaded, approached them, and shot them again.
One common thread is .22 caliber long ammunition used in several murders, including Dominguez and Edwards shot on the beach in Santa Barbara in 1963, the Swindle murders in Ocean Beach in '64, and the first confirmed Zodiac murders in the Bay Area, teenagers David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen shot in Solano County in 1968.
We have the distinct fingerprint of the Zodiac on these cases in Southern California.
In the Santa Barbara County murders, the killer also used rope to tie up his victims, just like the Zodiac did later in Napa County. And as News 8 reported earlier this year, the 1962 murder of cab driver Ray Davis in Oceanside could also be the work of the Zodiac because the killer once again used .22 caliber long ammo.
When they think of the Zodiac killer, they think of San Francisco area, but I really think that we need to focus on the San Diego area.
Then we have Cheri Jo Bates. On October 30th, 1966, 18-year-old Cheri Jo Bates was found brutally murdered near her college library in Riverside, California. She had been beaten and stabbed, and her car had been tampered with to prevent her from driving away. Weeks later, an anonymous confession letter was sent to the police, detailing aspects of the crime that only the killer would know. The writer claimed responsibility for the murder and hinted at more killings to come. Although some investigators believe the Zodiac was involved with Bates' death, others have dismissed the connection. But what's really weird is that there was a poem found carved into a library desk near the murder scene. And this poem that was carved into the desk bore a lot of similarities to the Zodiac's cryptic writings that he had taunted the police with. But once again, this case remains unresolved. In recent years, a suspect has been identified, though not enough evidence exists at this current moment for an arrest. Then we have the mysterious vanishing of Donna Lass. Donna Lass, a 25-year-old nurse working at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino's medical station in State Line, Nevada, disappeared without a trace on September 6, 1970. Her last recorded activity was treating a patient at 1:40 a.m., and she made her final logbook entry at 1:50 a.m. Later that day, her boss and landlord received odd phone calls from an unidentified man falsely claiming that Donna had left town due to a family emergency. In reality, there was no such emergency. Her car was found parked outside her apartment, but no one saw her leave the casino. Her apartment was eerily undisturbed, with the lights left on and her clothes neatly folded. Yet there was no sign of a struggle. On March 22, 1971, the San Francisco Chronicle received a postcard intended for journalist Paul Avery. The postcard, believed to be from the Zodiac killer, seemed to boast about Donna's disappearance. Dubbed the Peek Through the Pines card, it was a collage made from magazine clippings and ads depicting the Lake Tahoe area. The message included phrases such as Sierra Club, sought victim 12, and Peek Through the Pines, all written around an image of snow-covered scenery. The Zodiac's iconic cross-circle symbol was placed where a return address would normally be and at the bottom of the postcard. Years later, on December 27, 1974, Donna's sister Mary Pilker received a Christmas card showing snow-laden trees. Inside, a handwritten note said, "Best wishes, St. Donna and Guardian of the Pines," which was puzzling and unsettling. The postmark came from either San Mateo or Santa Clara County, but the sender remains unknown. And I do have to say, this is a really weird connection. That postcard was sent to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. my hometown. I googled it, it's really close to the children's hospital where this house was, and I thought that was crazy that Sioux Falls, South Dakota has a connection to the Zodiac case. On March 25, 1970, police reports linked the Zodiac to the Lake Tahoe area, mentioning an encounter where a man offered to read a woman's astrological chart. His description, age 30 to 40, 5'9", 160 pounds, with a chubby build and horn-rimmed glasses, matched Zodiac's general appearance. Although he left without incident, the connection to the Zodiac has fueled ongoing speculation. Sadly, in 1986, a skull was found near Emigrant Gap along California State Route 20. In 2023, DNA testing confirmed the remains belonged to Donna Lass, though authorities found no further evidence at the site, leaving her cause of death a mystery. Despite years of inquiry, as of 2024, South Lake Tahoe police have yet to establish a direct link between her disappearance and the Zodiac. In 2007, an amateur investigator thought they had pinpointed the location hinted at in the Peek Through the Pines card and informed the authorities. Despite digging in the identified area, no evidence surfaced. And in 2021, this is really interesting, a rock formation resembling the Zodiac's bullseye symbol was found near Hellhole Reservoir in the Sierra Nevadas, but investigators downplayed its significance, suggesting it was not a breakthrough in the case. Now this is super creepy. I actually wanted to head out to that area, but we just didn't have time. Someone was just hiking and they literally came across a Zodiac symbol in that same area that he was talking about with that postcard, and kind of near where Donna's body was found, a gigantic Zodiac made out of rocks. How interesting is that? Amateur Zodiac researcher Sandy Betts has long claimed that she's been targeted by those involved in the Zodiac killings. According to Betts, 3 different men have repeatedly stalked and harassed her, with one suspect having made several attempts on her life, the most recent in 2009. In 2018, Betts and other Zodiac enthusiasts planned a gathering to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Lake Herman Road murders, but the event was canceled after threats from a man who had allegedly stalked her for years. This individual, Betts asserts, believes his own father, who once tried to kill him, was the Zodiac killer. Around the same time the Zodiac was active, a series of brutal killings referred to as the Astrological murders took place in Northern California. Police tentatively connected these murders to a single suspect, responsible for the deaths of multiple women between the late 1960s and early 1970s. The victims were dispatched in various gruesome ways, including by strangulation, drowning, stabbing, and bludgeoning. The crimes all coincided with significant astrological dates, such as the equinoxes and solstices, with the bodies often found dumped in remote ravines. Victims of the astrological killer included 17-year-old Elaine Davis, whose body was found floating near Santa Cruz on December 19, 1969, after she had vanished from her Walnut Creek home weeks earlier. 16-year-old Leona Laurel Roberts, who was discovered 10 days before the winter solstice, having been abducted from her boyfriend's house. 15-year-old Cosette Ellison, whose body was found in a ravine just before the vernal equinox, while 20-year-old Patricia King was discovered strangled near Diablo Valley College, partially undressed. Other victims included Judith Hikari, Marie Antoinette Anstey, and Eva Lucienne Blau, all found murdered under similar circumstances, often being drugged. Could those murders be tied to the Zodiac killer? I mean, it's very possible. The Zodiac obviously had a clear fascination with metaphysical, Zodiac. There's a lot of coded things in his writing, and there's a lot of mystical stuff if you actually go in, which we're not going to do here, but you decode these ciphers and what he was doing. There's a lot of kind of magical, occult meanings to the Zodiac's murders, especially even looking at the rock symbol, the name itself, collecting the slaves. So I don't know. It's a really strange connection to have astrological murders happening right around the same time, same area as the Zodiac. I also want to state that none of those astrological murders have ever been solved. So that's a massive crime spree that's never been proven solved, linked to any known suspect. And another unsolved crime spree that the Zodiac could be responsible for is the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders, a series of 7 homicides between 1972 and 1973. Young women, often hitchhikers, were found dead in remote areas around Sonoma County and Santa Rosa. Investigators noticed similarities between the Zodiac's January 29, 1974 exorcist letter and certain details found in these murders, such as cryptic symbols found at the murder scenes and methodical planning. Arthur Lee Allen, a prime Zodiac suspect, was independently linked to the Santa Rosa murders. Allen, who was a former elementary school teacher, had been fired for child molestation and was attending Sonoma State University at the time of the killings. He also owned a mobile home in Santa Rosa. Though arrested for an unrelated crime in 1974, Arthur Lee Allen remained under suspicion in the Santa Rosa case due to evidence, including a unique chipmunk hair which had been found at multiple crime scenes, which he had been known to collect and study. So you had this weird chipmunk hair. There's that thing with the Zodiac too. I believe there was a chipmunk hair found on a body, and Arthur Lee Allen, the main suspect, one of them, had these chipmunks that lived with him. It's a super rare type of chipmunk, a very obscure type of chipmunk. But now you have all the details possible right now. This is way longer than I thought it was going to be, about the Zodiac murders. The Zodiac killer targeted and struck those initial 4 times. Then he disappeared, and the police will not connect him to these other murders. But there are these couples that were then targeted the exact same way, execution style murders. There's the motifs of tying up the people, hunting them like the most dangerous game. The astrological murders, a serial killer who was tied into the Zodiac and the astrological chart. There's so much to think about here. In this episode, we're not going to talk about the suspects because we have a completely new suspect that we're going to bring up halfway through our investigations. But to start this all off, we are going to go to the place that we started our investigations that day when we visited the San Francisco area. Our first location was a stop at the Lake Berryessa crime scene. In the middle of the day, it was about 100 degrees out that day. It was very hot, but this is where things get really bizarre. Now, keep your mind open here, everybody. If you're watching this video and you don't usually watch paranormal videos, I implore you, keep your mind open to the possibility. Because we've been doing this for years, and I believe in what we do here. We've gotten some really crazy evidence in the past, and as you're going to see, the evidence that we're about to get in this video is unbelievably crazy. But let's cut to Lake Berryessa now. So right now, on the hunt for the Zodiac, we are at the location of the Lake Berryessa murder. This location is where Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were tied up by the Zodiac and stabbed. So if you'll remember in that story, or if you've seen the film Zodiac by David Fincher, you'll remember that Brian and Cecilia were out here in September having a little, I don't want to call it a picnic, but they were just hanging out when a man dressed in an executioner hood and a strange outfit came up over this hill, and he was brandishing a pistol. Now, at first, Brian has said later on, he thought that they were just gonna get robbed, but Zodiac ended up hog-tying them both and then stabbing them in the back, thinking that both would die. But Brian survived, and that's how the image of the Zodiac was born. It was from his visual description of the outfit that he was wearing. And yeah, we've never been out here, but we have a GPS coordinate, and we're gonna go hike over there and do a little paranormal investigating. Throughout this documentary, we're gonna be using paranormal investigation techniques. I wanna state right now, we are not specifically trying to talk to anybody necessarily. We're just asking the energies and any spirits or energies that might be in the area if they know anything or have seen anything. So, ready?
Let's do this. All right. It's quite bright out here.
Yeah.
Oh, we can go down here and walk across. You think it's that one? That's what it looked more like on the... Right here.
Oh, yeah, bro. It is right here. So, this is it.
Look at these sticker bushes.
Obviously, we can't go walking through this area behind us. This is the area right here where Brian and Cecilia were stabbed. And you can kind of see Zodiac coming from over there to this area. And according to researchers, there are tree stumps in there that show kind of the exact area, but I'm not gonna go digging through there.
No.
To anyone that might be out here at Lake Berryessa, my name's Colin.
My name's Connor.
And we're just here to try solve and figure out the murders that happened here. The murders that to this day are unsolved. Brunswick. Can you tell us something about the man who attacked the couple that was here?
Get out of here.
Get out of here. Sexo? S-E-X-O? So, whoever's here, if you remember what happened in September that year when Brian and Cecilia were stabbed, can you tell us anything about the man that came up and attacked them? What did they look like?
Share my story.
Share my story, fuzzy. That's what we're trying to do.
Can you tell us what the killer's name was?
Jill.
They're wondering what his name is too.
Unfortunately, the person who carried out this attack has never been caught. Is there anything else about that day that...
She shot me.
Is there anything else about that day that people don't know happened? Maybe did the killer ever come back to this area and you saw him without the mask? She-male. What the fuck? She-male, she shot Jill. The name is Jill. That's really strange. Was the killer a male or a female?
Neither.
What? Neither.
That doesn't make any sense.
That's really strange, dude. What?
Sliced.
Sliced. They were stabbed right here. And SC, South Carolina. It's interesting that it said illustrated.
Santa Clara?
Santa Clarita?
That was one of the locations that was under curfews.
Right. And DUI. It was somebody that got a DUI in Santa Clarita? Santa Clara? Resolution.
Can you tell us maybe why he picked this location? There's no signal. I mean, they didn't have cell phones back then.
Fitting location.
It was a fitting location.
Dude, that's crazy, actually.
Was it because it was so quiet out here?
Ranch.
There's a bunch of ranches out here. Did the killer own one of the ranches out here?
Now, this is interesting because when I typed in Zodiac Killer Ranch, it came up with a page called the Zodiac Shack. Basically, this is an old ranch-style building that is near the Lake Herman location where the first two officially confirmed Zodiac murders happened. Now, this ranch, this shack, apparently is a place that's kind of shrouded in local legend, where locals say that the Zodiac Killer would hide out after murdering people. I just thought that that's a really strange connection, and that building is definitely very creepy. The proximity to Lake Herman Road, it's just weird. Lance. L-A-N-C-E.
Is that the killer's name? God, it scared me. What kind of duck is that?
Okay, we kind of glazed over that, but this is incredibly strange. So you heard the word Lance, the name Lance, come through our device right there. Well, when I typed in Lance Zodiac Killer, I came across this guy. Lance Jeffrey Voss. Now, according to a lot of people, Lance Jeffrey Voss is one of the most prolific serial killers in America. He was questioned by the police. He's pretty much 100% the guy that murdered a bunch of people, but he was never officially charged with any murders. Now, something really bizarre is that Lance actually worked at the Lake Berryessa Public Library just a few miles from this location we were at the same time that these murders happened at. And there are whole forums dedicated to Lance being the Zodiac killer, similarities between his MO and the Zodiac killings. And I just couldn't leave this out. I mean, that's just really strange. What are some other details the police or the public don't know about the murder that happened here?
Cabin.
Vitamins cabin. What does that mean?
Did the killer leave any clues about who he is out here?
Contamination.
What kind of contamination?
Do you know if the killer is dead?
I'm a little sad.
Sorry to hear that. We're trying to help get some justice for Cecilia, who lost her life here.
This camera's getting a temperature warning.
Really?
Carl.
Carl?
Is that the killer's name, Carl? Now, here's another interesting red herring. So as you could hear Connor say in that clip, our camera started to overheat. This happens sometimes when we're in really hot environments and the camera will literally shut down and not allow us to record. But one of the last words that we captured was Carl. Now, I did a cursory search of Carl Zodiac Killer, and I came across a man named Carl F. Werner, who actually was considered to be the Zodiac for a while. Now, Carl was an American serial killer who was active in Santa Clara County, SC, like it said before, in Northern California, somewhat close to where all of this stuff happened. Now, Carl was found guilty of the August 3rd, 1969 slayings of 14-year-old Deborah Gay Furlong and 15-year-old Kathy Rain Snoozy. These are two girls that were found on a hillside. They had been stabbed. Kathy had 200 knife wounds, and Deborah had over 100. So this was a really violent couple murders. Now, interestingly enough, there are people online who swear that Carl F. Werner was the Zodiac killer. I mean, he had the same sort of glasses as the Zodiac. Some of his timelines match up, and some of the Zodiac correspondences even allude to the fact that the murders of those two girls might have been carried out by the Zodiac himself. There are some really bizarre connections here. I don't know what to think of this, but I had to include this because that's crazy.
Carl with the K.
Thank you for talking.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else you can tell us? It's like 96 degrees out right now.
It's very hot. And I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt.
Let's go do a spirit box in the car.
Alright.
It's way too hot up here. Alright. Whoever's out here, we're still going to keep asking questions, but just try to follow us back to our car. Alright, so we're in the car now. It is way too hot. It's about 100 degrees outside, so our camera was literally overheating. But it's interesting because, you know, neither of the victims actually died out there. Cecilia was taken to the hospital and she died 2 days later. But the Zodiac came through this exact path because he walked down this path right here. So any spirits that are in the area, or energies, we're assuming would have seen whoever it was walking through. So we're just going to do a quick spirit box and see if we can hear anything. If there's anybody here, we were just talking to somebody down there on that little island. Can you tell us anything about the murders that happened in September 1969? It's hot. It's in the goddamn car. Chevy.
Did the killer drive a Chevy?
Joseph. As it turns out, the name Joseph had some relevancy. There are people online who believe that the Zodiac could have been a man named Joseph Newton Chandler III. Now, there are photos of this Joseph guy that look very strikingly similar to how the Zodiac killer was described by victims who survived. It was known that he lived in and spent time in California. If you'll remember in that letter when the Zodiac talks about engineering a bomb, Joseph Chandler was an electrical engineer and had the capability to do something like that. He was terminally ill towards the end of his life, isolated, and it was even reported that at one point Joseph told one of his co-workers, quote, "Whoever is looking for me is getting close." But the really interesting thing is the handwriting. Now, here is the Zodiac killer's handwriting. Take a look at this up close. And look at the Zodiac's uppercase R, that looping R. It's very distinct. Now, here is Joseph Newton Chandler III's handwriting, and you can see there are some really distinct similarities. I mean, it's really bizarre. I don't know how much stock I place in this theory, but I mean, it's just crazy how many names and words that we got during this investigation were indeed super relevant.
He did drive a Chevy. He drove a Chevy. Contains Chevy. Joseph deny. I'm not going to focus on that. Our device said Chevy. That's crazy. It's the car that was seen out here.
Now, this is really crazy. There are several different descriptions of the car that the Zodiac was seen driving, but at the Lake Herman Road murders, witnesses identified a car that looked like a white 1959 Chevy Impala. Then at the Blue Rock Springs murders, it was a 1963 Chevy Corvair. Then at Lake Berryessa, where we were at that point, the suspicious man who was seen, who people believe was most likely the Zodiac, was described as driving a late model two-door Chevy that was sky blue or silver blue in color. So it seemed like the Zodiac killer loved his Chevys, and it is really bizarre to think that we got the word Chevy when we're asking questions about the killer, and at the moment we were sitting in a parking lot, and it was probably in this area where the Zodiac parked his vehicle before carrying out the attack here.
Lesbians? Dude, she-male, she shot us, lesbians? I mean, there's got to be something to that, dude. I've never seen shit like that come through on this device. Hotel. Was the Zodiac a man? Was the person who carried out these killings here a man? Red. What else can you tell us about the driver of the Chevy? Possibility. Did the driver of the Chevy live around here? Loops. Is there anything else you can tell us about the driver of that blue Chevy? Anything at all? Realtor. So the Zodiac was a realtor in California? Larry.
As if this couldn't continue to get any more strange, the name Larry is incredibly relevant. So another suspect of the Zodiac murders was a man named Lawrence Kane. Now, Larry Kane, which is the name that he went by, was actually born as Lawrence Klein on April 29, 1924 in Brooklyn, New York. He had a lengthy criminal rap sheet dating back to the 1940s. And Pam Huckabee, the sister of Darlene Ferrin, one of the Zodiac victims, actually claims that Larry Kane followed Darlene in the months before her murder. Like, he was in the area, he followed her, he was known to her, she identified him. And additionally, Kathleen Johns, the Zodiac victim that was pregnant that he picked up and took her on a joyride, she picked Kane out of a lineup as her abductor. Then in 1969, during the peak of the Zodiac's activity, Larry Kane was 45 years old, weighed around 160 pounds, and was 5 foot 9 inches tall, matching the description. He suffered brain damage from an auto accident in 1962 and allegedly was diagnosed by a psychologist in 1965 as losing the ability to control self-gratification. Interestingly enough, this is an actual audio recording of suspect Larry Kane talking in the 1940s, and on this audio recording, he actually says out loud the word torture, which is a word that the Zodiac killer wrote frequently in his letters talking about torturing his slaves. And he says the word Zodiac. Just take a listen.
This record is not endorsed by the United States Navy or any of its auxiliary organizations. Any similarity to persons living is almost as bad off as Eileen Barton. I would at this time like to take advantage of the fact that anyone who should be listening to this record cannot talk back to me and cannot interrupt my chain of thought. I would like at this time to make apologies for the record #1 in this series, entitled Gallitzin Here I Come, or 5 Graves to Altoona. At the time of the making of the record, the young man who made it was under the influence of spirits of 76, but I'm sure it was 176, all straight, blues. When the train ride was over, he had the strangest idea that he had pulled the train all the way from New York by means of a rope tied to his hair. Oh, my head. But to continue, he then went to this fine place and made a record that will set progress back 150 years. He then went to a hotel to sleep it off, all 176 of them. When he awoke, he realized the mistake he had made. He jumped on his pogo stick and rushed over to try to... He left no table unturned. In fact, he even swept the floor to get that, but it was all veil. All was gone. The die was cast. The fates had played their little game. So, as his setting sun sets beyond the isle of Purataki, Saki, Faki, whatever it is, island, and his Sagittarian love, who is by birth under the sign of Zodiac, a hot-tempered and very non-understanding person, figures out ways to torture him for his wrong. Not ordinary tortures, mind you, but fiendish, diabolical things like waiting for 9 hours online to hear 4 girls in back of them blow them undernourished S. Oh, that's all he hopes and prays, is that some night, when she feels very, very lonely and in a very, very understanding mood, she will reason for that record and favor and destroy it. Cause here, nobody ever seeing that again. Thank you very much, Anthony.
So, could Larry Kane be the Zodiac killer? I don't really know. This is for you to make up your own mind on.
Are you saying the person who you saw in the Chevy who was out here who killed that girl and attacked those 2 people, they were a realtor?
Hood! The Zodiac! Wearing the hood out here.
What was underneath the hood? Can you tell us anything else about what happened? Found. Terminals. How many people did that guy kill? Adrian. And they buried me here. He killed someone named Adrian? Ties. They tied him up. Bottom ties. Abandoned. Why did he tie them up before stabbing them? He had a gun. Why didn't he just shoot them?
Under the ground.
They buried me here under the ground? Confidential? It's confidential why he didn't just shoot them? And what was buried out here? Out here? It's talking about something buried. We are curious. Why was he murdering people? Print the cipher. If anybody who's watching this video has any idea what these words could mean, please tell us as well. Print number. Confidential, curious print number. We're about to leave. Is there anything else you want to share with us about that suspect? Yeah. Anything else? Try to just say it.
Family.
Eat family. Alright guys, well, this is only our first stop in this Zodiac video, We've got more places to go hit today. But yeah, this is crazy. I feel like I've watched David Fincher's movie a number of times because it's really such a great film. And that scene is so jarring. And then to just consider that that is what really happened, and then to be looking at the exact spot where that happened, and to think of the boogeyman himself, the Zodiac, wearing that costume right here. It's just eerie.
It's really creepy to think that, I mean, for the most part, he was, killing a lot of people in San Francisco. But to drive all the way out here...
Yeah, this is like...
It's like almost like he was following them from San Francisco or wherever they were from to this area.
It's weird. Like, it really is remote. Like, driving here, we had to go through, like, miles and miles of winding roads where you could just fall off at any second. So this is not an easy place to get to. So it really, yeah, it does make you wonder what the was he doing out here.
Very much.
And I feel like reading about it, you think it's... I feel like reading about it, you might think it's kind of close to, like, San Francisco. It's not at all. We got a 2-hour drive back to San Francisco right now. That is really weird.
Spectre.
All right.
On to the next.
On to the next.
So Lake Berryessa was incredibly interesting. It was a little bit hotter than we would have liked it to be out there. Our camera completely overheated and stopped filming. Like, it wouldn't let us film anymore because it was overheated. But we decided to stick it through. And we got some really, really interesting information, possible clues about the Zodiac, weird words that our devices were saying that we, don't see very often, some really bizarre words in there. But we knew that our investigation had to continue. We had to keep pushing to see what we could capture at the next crime scene. So we took the 2-hour drive and we headed to the Zodiac's first official crime scene, where Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were shot on that isolated country road.
So the first murders officially attributed to the Zodiac killer happened right here outside of Vallejo, California. On December 20th, 1968, Betty Lou Jensen and David Arthur Faraway were parked here in a car. This used to be way more isolated. It was like a lover's lane. It says that they were parked on a gravel runoff near a water pump gate, which this is the exact location. They were parked here and somebody pulled up to them. This person then opened fire with a .22 rifle, and both of them later died. This was the start of the crime spree. Obviously, nobody at first knew that these murders would go on to be connected to the biggest unsolved serial killer spree in American history, but it was really the start right here. Got some nice 666 graffiti.
There's something over here about 1969. Been making work here since 1969.
Been making, I think it says work. Whoopee. Been making whoopee here. See right here.
Oh, Zodiac.
The Zodiac symbol.
And a lot of trash.
Yeah, this looks to be a dumping ground now. It's kind of a place where you would drive by and you would have no idea that this was like a double homicide from the Zodiac killer. It took place off the side of the road here. But it's kind of loud, so we're gonna do a spirit box session in the car and see if we can get any more details about the Zodiac killer. And yeah, just interesting to be here. What do you think?
I think it's really strange, a lot of these locations where he was killing people. I mean, a lot of it is places that you wouldn't think that a murder would happen. Like that park, and now this. Like, this is super inconspicuous. I pulled in here and I was like, this can't be it. But
it's it.
It's it.
It is weird. It's really random too when you actually drive all this shit. It's like going from Lake Berryessa, where we were, to here. It's such a winding, like, this is so random right here compared to way out there.
So was he just like driving and then came across them?
I don't know.
Did they go do something in town and then he followed them out here?
I think that he followed them, but I don't know.
But it's like even the park though, like that's so far out in the middle of
The park's in the
nowhere.
middle of nowhere, really. But let's do a spirit box. To whoever's out here, if there's anybody out here, can you tell us something about the guy who murdered Betty and Arthur on this road? Lottery. Can you give us any physical descriptions of the person that killed Betty and Arthur? Realtor again. That's weird.
I mean, you had to have a day job.
Struck.
I lost one of my legs.
I lost one of my legs.
Going to the car audio. Was the guy who murdered these two a realtor? Because someone else told us earlier that they were a realtor. Is that true? What did they look like? Ooh. Do you know the name of the person who targeted those teenagers out here?
Round.
Research Council Realm Square.
Why did he choose these people? Were these killings completely random?
Message.
Out. Message out. Who's Alice?
Maybe. Well, Alice, thank you for speaking with us. Was the person who killed these two a man or a woman? Before, we got some words that suggested... I don't know. But can you just confirm? Everyone thinks it was a man? It's kind of eerie that we're doing this in the car and that's where they were shot and killed. You know, sometimes we do these investigations and we investigate in the car and it doesn't... People say it doesn't make sense, but in this case, this is exactly like what it would have looked like.
Can you tell us what this man looked like?
We want to.
We want to? Why can't they? What?
Did you not see? Was he wearing a mask? Mask.
I heard that. Can you just confirm that it was a man? Can you say yes? Forward stranger. The victims didn't know. Maybe if you are a victim, you didn't know the guy who killed you. It's so strange it won't give an answer about male or female.
Is there anything you do know? Huh?
Half male, half female. Dude.
Camera.
I know people are online gonna be like, this is so stupid. But it's also like really weird, dude. Like we actually believe in this shit. And I've never seen it say she-male and like lesbians and all those words. And then I ask if it's man or woman, it says half. Like what is that?
I mean, like, it could have just been like a masculine female.
Suspect. Aggressive suspect. Aggressive suspect 30.
I mean, it really could have just been like a very masculine female.
Or, I mean, it could have... He, she, could have been transgender. I mean, maybe that's why they were looking at...
See?
Maybe they've been looking in the wrong place the whole time. I don't know. That's just how we're interpreting what we're getting. It's weird.
I mean, you kind of have to be open to whatever, because they never caught the person who did it.
Clearly, yeah. Is there anything else you can tell us about what happened that people don't know about?
Or maybe he had a woman helper.
Any other details you can give us?
Goodbye.
Well, I'm gonna turn that off. Well, this has been interesting right here.
Very.
Husband. Titans. But we've got... Answer. We got a couple more places that we need to visit when investigating. I mean, we've been here like 20, 30 minutes already. Really interesting stuff, though. I definitely have more questions than answers, though, so far. Let's move on to the next one. So, as you can see, this evidence was getting really, really bizarre as the investigation continued. And these spots definitely have just a weird energy to them. It's just there, you know? In this video, we're not directly trying to contact, you know, the victims. We're trying to just contact anything or anybody that may be out there in a very vague sense. But yeah, you can see that whatever energies were out there were telling us to look in a certain direction and seemed to start pointing us in a certain way. But since we were so close, literally about a 5-minute drive away, we then headed to the crime scene where Darlene and Michael were shot. Now, if you remember, Darlene could be a key piece to solving this entire Zodiac thing because she allegedly knew the killer. So let's cut to us investigating that now, and then things are gonna get crazy. So the second officially confirmed Zodiac murder happened right here in this parking lot. What's interesting is that this murder location is actually only about 6 minutes from the location that we just visited. Now, this is where Michael McGough and Darlene Ferrin were sitting in their car at around midnight on July 4th, 1969. Similar attack happened here. The attacker approached with a flashlight. They believed it was a cop. They immediately opened fire on Darlene and Michael. Now, Darlene slumped over and she died. Michael was hit in the arm. He was wounded. The attacker, the Zodiac, went back to their vehicle and did something in the car, and Michael tried to escape from the vehicle, but the Zodiac saw that, so he came back and he fired more shots at the couple. Now, Darlene died, Michael survived. He was able to provide details of all of this that happened, but once again, it's just insane how this is literally Zodiac killer, the most notorious unsolved serial killing spree in American history, happened right here in this parking lot, and it's just like a normal ass park, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It would have happened actually right here if you want to show that. Our GPS pin showed that they were probably right here somewhere.
It's another weird thing. If this is a public park, probably pretty popular back in the day. I mean, people didn't have TV shows that they're watching all the time back then. Like, this is where people came to have fun back then. It's completely different.
It is different in its own way, and yet it's so similar, where it's a couple young kids really that are out here parked at another Lover's Lane type scenario where this guy apparently followed them out here and then shot and killed them. It's just weird because the Lake Berryessa murder was over an hour from here. San Francisco is a good 45 minutes from here, but these two murders happened like 5 minutes apart from each other. So it's really strange as to why the killer chose this geographical area right here. It's never really been explained.
Very strange.
Once again, because it's loud out here, we're gonna sit in our car and do a little investigating. And once again, it makes sense because Darlene and Michael were both shot. Darlene died in their vehicle, parked about right exactly where we're at. So, but if you want to go with the actual theory of the Zodiac, which I believe is true, there's so many unsolved other murders that happened. So he could be responsible of, you know, upwards of 30 murders, which I think is true. But the official Zodiac spree started there. Second was here, Lake Berryessa, and then San Francisco.
Weird.
So let's see.
Just crazy.
To anybody that might be here, it said female again. So it's been saying things like female all day. What does that have to do with the murders that happened here, or the murder?
America's boy.
Danger.
Trail.
Boy Danger Trail. Was the person who committed this murder a man?
Pilot.
He's a pilot?
What can you tell us about the suspect that we don't know already? Font. I don't know, the woman thing's really strange.
Very.
The number 8.
Did this person kill more than 5 people? Can you say that again? Violent. Nicholas Violent. Unemployment. Did he not have a job at the time?
Father.
Are you saying he had kids? The guy who killed these people?
Yeah, the dog.
What kind of dog did he have?
Cheryl.
Cheryl.
Who's breed? The f***? That's kind of crazy. What kind of breed was his dog? Dog.
Macy.
Is that the dog's name? I feel like we're kind of going off subject here.
What does the dog have to do with the killer? Was the dog in the car with them that night in their vehicle?
Female blood.
What the f*** does that mean? What does all this mean with the... Oh my god, you see that gun?
Oh, it's a lighter, I think.
What's the deal with women and female? Are you talking about like a female salvation saver? Was the Zodiac killer, the suspect here, religious at all? Can you tell us anything? I mean, what's the angle with the woman? It's so weird.
Maybe he was...
Did the Zodiac, this killer is what they call him, did they go to church?
Yes. Legion.
Legion. Like Legion of Demons. But they were trying to collect the Legion.
So, why did he start killing people?
Tail bearer.
What the f***? Tail and tail bearer? What the f*** is... I don't know what a tail bearer is. A person who maliciously gossips or reveals secrets.
Strangled.
Strangled. It said suffocated earlier. Did the same killer strangle other victims? So there was religion. There's something with religion in this? The Bible, I heard.
Zero.
Was this suspect wealthy?
Yeah.
Anything else you can tell us about what happened here before we go?
He was dedicated.
Last chance to tell us any new information that people might not know.
Attic hides something is hidden.
What the fuck? Attic hides something is hidden. So maybe in somebody's attic there's a clue or something.
Well, there's a lot of attics in California.
Yeah, let's go check them all. What's hidden in the attic? Or maybe it's figurative. I don't know.
What's figurative about an attic?
I don't know. Maybe like your brain's the attic.
Yeah, we gotta find the guy first.
Yeah. Anything else? What's in the attic?
Fresh.
Alright, well.
Alright, guys. So, this is our third investigation today. And we've got one more place in San Francisco to go visit. And it is the location of the Zodiac's last confirmed kill. Like I was saying before, I think... look at, and it said favorite. Like his favorite kill. There's so much to get into here, but this has been really... There's something really strange with a woman. You know?
Dessert.
I mean, you could also be looking at it like...
They deserve it?
Yeah, right. He paid special attention to the female victim, so it's like... I don't know though. Maybe he had an accomplice that was a woman. Maybe he was married and they're saying you could talk to his wife. Maybe he was transgender. I don't know.
No telling. Alright.
Alright, so much evidence. Such a bizarre way this whole thing began to unravel. But we knew we had to keep investigating this thing. So let's cut right now to our final stop of the night when we visited the Paul Stein crime scene where that cab driver was shot in the head, the last known and officially confirmed Zodiac kill. All right, so we're now in San Francisco, right off of the Presidio neighborhood. This is a really nice neighborhood in town. Keep in mind, this has all been filmed on the same day. So we went from 98 degrees out at the lake today to it's 59 right now in San Francisco. But if you come,
it was 99 degrees at the lake.
It was probably hotter. That's just what the car said. But as you can see by that street sign right there, we are right now at
Can't really see it.
Yeah, maybe we could walk over there afterwards. But we're right now standing on the corner of Washington and Cherry Street in downtown San Francisco. And this was the location of the final confirmed Zodiac murder. Basically, the Zodiac requested a cab. He had the driver drive him to a location. They were supposed to be going near here, but they ended up here. It's kind of unknown why. And then the Zodiac randomly killed this cab driver. People from one of these houses around here saw him. They reported that they saw this white male with a stocky build, 5'9", 5'10". And then the Zodiac fled on foot after cutting off a bloody piece of the cab driver's shirt. What's interesting though is that police officers responded to that call. They did not stop him. They thought that they were looking for an African-American man, so they saw the Zodiac killer in this area leaving the crime scene on foot. They did not stop or talk to him. They could have solved this case right then and there, but they did not. And yeah, he slipped away into the darkness, and still That was almost 50 years ago. He's never been caught. This is our final place this evening where we're going to investigate, and what a gloomy, eerie way to end this video. I mean, just take a look at the fog that's settling in, and once again, you would never expect. It's such a beautiful area. Zodiac
Completely different
here.
MO again.
Yeah, and he purposely switched up again.
Yeah.
Crazy. And it's cold.
It's very cold.
Any thoughts to offer?
I mean, just the fact that this could have been all solved when the police came to the scene, and it was probably him. Just in this quiet little neighborhood. Why did he pick here to get dropped off? No one knows. Is there significance with the streets? Is this maybe where he grew up? You never know. Chances are we never will.
Unless we get answers right now.
Very true. So let's get in this car.
Hey everybody, it's Colin here. Thank you for watching today's video. Hello to all the new subscribers and hello to the rest of our beautiful, wonderful, spooky family. As you know, every single week here on the channel, we give away a free gift bag to one lucky viewer of the show. And this week, to enter the contest, all you have to do is like today's video, let's smash that like button, and comment Zodiac in the comments section below. I'm gonna give y'all 10 seconds to do this now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So go comment. You can comment multiple times. It helps the video so much. But anyways, let's get back to today's video. Thank you for listening to my little spiel. I love you guys so much, and stay spooky.
Our fourth session today. To whoever's here, I want to introduce ourselves. My name's Colin.
My name's Connor.
And we're trying to speak with any spirits in this area, or specifically Paul Stine, the murder victim from 1969. Head Sciences. We're trying to figure out the identity of the Zodiac killer. Can you give us any clues about who killed Paul Stine? Head Sciences specialists. Him. Smoke. Who's him? His dad, or Dave. His wife. Black.
The one who...
He killed us.
Okay, he killed... Can you tell us who is he? Can you give us a name? Rapist. Smoking? And that said smoke. Was the killer a smoker? Yang.
Who is the Zodiac?
Agricultural ranch at the beginning of all... Something with a ranch or a farmer or something. Give us some more hints. Sick. Rocky. Heaven. Schools. Zodiac. Threatening to shoot up the school bus.
That was right after this one. Wasn't it?
So the same guy who shot Paul here threatened to blow up a school bus and murder the children. He did.
20?
Yellow. Scholarship.
Why did he pick this spot?
Fortune.
Consultant's fortune. Maybe because it was a wealthy area. Wanted to strike here.
Yeah.
What was the whole point of the murders? Hung. What was the point of the murders? Corresponding, the Zodiac, writing the letters.
Consultants.
Efficiently corresponding.
Testing.
Can you just describe what the suspect looked like? Or I guess, what was his job? Do you know what he did for a living? Tribune. Newspaper.
Did he work for the newspaper?
Did he work for the newspaper?
My whole life is here.
14.
Tribune. 14. My whole life was here.
Was the Zodiac? What town was he from? Valley.
Where was Zodiac from?
We had just gotten the name Richard on our spirit box, and at the time we didn't even know that Richard was a suspect at all in this equation. Now, that's crazy enough. You can clearly hear it say Richard, but just wait until you see what's coming next.
Retired. It's weird because it said unemployed and like retired.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us the name of the city though, where he's from? What town was he from?
Patricia.
Gloria.
Why did he always change his MO?
Crab apple? Was he responsible for all those other murders?
Tapping.
How many murders is he responsible for?
Walk left.
How many murders was Zodiac responsible for?
Prisoner.
Sustain.
Susan.
Strangely enough, there is an unsolved murder that matches up with this evidence. The murder of a 22-year-old woman named Susan Marie Lynch, who was found dead on July 31st, 1971, after she was buried alive in sand. Now, the connection to the Zodiac here is weak at best, but in one of the Zodiac's letters, he seemingly mentions murdering somebody in a similar matter. Now, I don't know who murdered Susan. I don't know exactly what the Zodiac connection is, but if you guys want to research this further, you just have to head to zodiacciphers.com and look at the article titled The Murder of Susan Marie Lynch.
I'm not playing.
Here.
Shit on. 3 guys.
Is the man who murdered Paul here the Zodiac killer? Are they dead?
I'm upset.
Yep. What the fuck? Dude, look at Patricia and Patricia. Two completely different devices. That's fucking crazy, dude. What's Patricia?
Who's Patricia?
I can tell you exactly who Patricia was. So on that same website, zodiacciphers.com, there is an article about the murder of Patricia King. Now, apparently there isn't a lot of information online about Patricia, but the murder of Patricia is an unsolved crime. Patricia was murdered on March 5th, 1970. She disappeared during a 90-second walk on her school campus and was found in the DVC Vikings football stadium. She had been assaulted and strangled. Now, interestingly, Patricia's body was found in kind of the Zodiac area. And in fact, she was found on the campus of Mount Diablo College. Now, if you'll remember, the Zodiac sent that Mount Diablo map letter just a few months later on June 26th, 1970. Remember, he sent that map with the code and the challenge to decipher what he was talking about? In some of his letters, the Zodiac also writes out the word speaking with the king at the end of the word separated or trailing off. Maybe he's referring to the king in Patricia King. Whatever the answer is here, I don't know, but Patricia's murder is still unsolved, and this is a really bizarre connection. Once again, you can find that article if you want to do further research.
Live. Not lies.
Lies.
Ava.
Scandals?
Writing.
Did the Zodiac want to be caught?
Catch him. Is there any other information you can share with us about the Zodiac killer that would help us or help anybody solve the case?
I like the dark.
Him.
Fucking.
Southeast. Yep.
What's southeast?
Is there any other information you can tell us about the suspect that would help? Condos. Michael. Steven. Taken. What a spooky fucking night. Brother. Well.
His brother?
Paul. I thought I've heard twice.
Gary.
Now, in another crazy red herring twist, we got the name Gary. Gary Francis Post is one of the leading suspects that people believe is the Zodiac killer. Gary died in 2018, but in 2021, a civilian volunteer group called the Casebreakers announced publicly that they had identified Gary Francis Post as the elusive Zodiac killer. They apparently decided this through a combination of evidence involving shell cartridges, photographs, fingerprints from Gary, cryptic writings that Gary penned, and DNA harvested from his old clothing and a blood relative. Apparently, Gary had DNA that matched up with some of the Zodiac DNA fingerprints that seemed to be a match. Gary and the Zodiac killer allegedly shared the exact same shoe size and wore the same type of shoes. Gary lived near the areas where the murders occurred. He owned the same firearms that the Zodiac killer used. And a huge point of this is that the Zodiac killer in the sketches was believed to have had forehead scars, like very distinct scarring. And Gary had almost the exact forehead scars on his own head. Now, there are a lot of things that we could get into here, but it should be noted that the FBI and other agencies are still looking at the possibility that Gary Post could be the Zodiac killer. I mean, how crazy is this?
Dude, there was a suspect named Gary.
I thought so.
foot. Should they look into Gary again?
Horrible things happen.
Horrible things happened here.
Some of that car blasting its lights behind us. This car's pulling up right behind us.
Condo again.
Condo? Sure.
Floyd collect?
Collecting the slaves. The murders, she said, were slaves. So much information.
Honestly.
Can you tell me anything about the female, the woman angle that we've been told about all day?
Adam.
Houses.
So he was a realtor?
Dude, that's f***ing weird. Guys, you've seen these investigations as they've happened. Something has spoken repeatedly about a woman. She-male.
Lesbian.
Half man, woman. And it's also repeatedly brought up a realtor. Houses, condo.
Condo again.
Purchasing, realtor. And it said the name of Gary.
Why are you here?
We want to figure out who the Zodiac was. Well, I think that's about all we're gonna get. Forward.
Ghost.
Alright.
Yeah, let's ask one more question each. Allen! Arthur Lee Allen is the suspect.
Julian.
So, as many of you might know, Arthur Lee Allen is the main suspect that has been thought to be the Zodiac killer for decades. And he remains nowadays the main suspect in the Zodiac killer case. Now, handwriting analysis and fingerprinting was done on Arthur Lee Allen that supposedly cleared him, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that points towards him being the killer. For example, he misspelled the word Christmas as Christmas, which is exactly what the Zodiac killer did. Arthur Lee Allen had a stocky build and matched the Zodiac profile and sketches. He owned shoes of the same style and size as those found at the Zodiac crime scenes. He himself wore a Zodiac watch, which is where the Zodiac symbol came from. He lived just 50 yards away from where Darlene Ferrin worked. Apparently, according to some, he knew her. Mike Mago identified Arthur Lee Allen in a lineup, and Arthur lived in Vallejo. Interestingly enough, it's been reported that Arthur's favorite book was The Most Dangerous Game, which is the book that the Zodiac killer talks about. And at one point when Arthur was stopped and questioned because he was near one of the crime scenes, bloody knives were found in the trunk of his car. This was after the Lake Berryessa attack, and he claimed that he had been hunting that day and cleaning an animal. But he's been cleared. Personally, I don't think that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac killer. But it's hard to write off all of that evidence because it's really just bizarre. It still doesn't sit right with me.
What the f?
Arthur Lee Allen.
What the f?
Was it Allen?
Please be careful here.
Now we've got Gary, Allen. I'm more confused now than when we started. Anybody in the comments who has anything that they can add here? This is your last chance. Do you have any word you can tell us?
I was in the military.
Maybe it was someone who's in...
It didn't just reset by itself.
Maybe someone in the war came back, PTSD, making them go crazy, thinking they need to kill people.
I came from a dark place.
Well, if anyone has any ideas here, this has been incredibly interesting, but
very.
It's 8:30 and we've been at this for hours and hours. So we're going to call it a night. Thank you, Paul, if you've been talking to us.
Beware of the dark.
I came from a dark place. Beware of the dark. DIV. All right.
So at the end of the day, who was the Zodiac killer? I cannot say for certain, but honestly, after having the conversation that I had and just reading and researching all of this extensively, I definitely believe that a strong contender is Richard Hoffman. I'm not alleging anything here. These are just conversations that I've had with people close to this thing, but I've never seen evidence that quite lines up exactly like this does. And as you heard, according to him, they have uncovered some kind of earth-shattering new revelations that they're waiting to reveal in this new television program that they've been producing. I'm hoping that they are working with the authorities. Like he said, he wants this thing just to be solved, and he wants to be helpful. And I think it's crazy. I mean, the Zodiac, you don't have a more infamous serial killer. Literally, he's like a boogeyman, wearing that executioner's outfit, targeting random people, taunting the police, making everybody's lives a nightmare living in the San Francisco area for years. And still to this day, he's haunting them. He's haunting groups of people. He's haunting the authorities. Even if he's dead, which he probably is, it's almost like he's still alive, terrorizing the streets. And it's almost like you can feel the Zodiac killer sometimes when you're out at these crime scenes. A haunting figure that's determined to stick around until he's finally captured. I hope you guys have enjoyed this extended video. I've personally wanted to do this episode for years, and I am just so unbelievably thankful that you all have stuck around with me this long. Next week, we are headed to Europe to begin our European series, beginning in England. We're going back to do some traditional ghost hunting videos. I know some people haven't liked the true crime and conspiracy. Others have really loved them. I personally love doing them a lot. But yeah, I really am curious if there is a true crime case or a conspiracy theory that you would like us to cover on the channel and perform a paranormal investigation relating to. Please comment it in the comments section because I want to hear from you guys. I think it's very interesting to do these unsolved crime spree investigations because we can get evidence like we did in this one that's a bit mind-blowing. But yeah, I love y'all so much. Stay safe out there. I will see you guys next Monday. And as always, thank you for watching and stay spooky. Hello.